I paid for my daughter's entire life. Her house, her car, her vacations, even her fancy baby shower. And my thank you? At that very party, she told me to shut up because I don't work. She thought my contribution was silent and my voice was worthless. She didn't know I keep very good records, and my toast to her was about to become a public audit of her fraudulent life. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Hattie Dubois, and for 40 years my work has been largely invisible. After my dear husband Robert passed away, leaving me with the fruits of his successful business and our shared, prudent investments, my full-time job became one of quiet stewardship. I managed our estate with the same meticulous care I once used to manage our home. I was a homemaker, yes, but I was also the CEO of our family's legacy. This was a distinction my daughter, Chloe, never quite managed to grasp. At 66, I lived a life of chosen simplicity. My home was comfortable but not ostentatious. My clothes were elegant but not flashy. I found joy not in acquiring things but in giving them. Specifically in giving them to Chloe. My daughter, at 38, was a masterpiece of modern branding. She was a lifestyle influencer, a title I found both baffling and slightly absurd. Her life, as presented to her tens of thousands of online followers, was a curated fantasy of effortless wealth, impeccable taste, and aspirational motherhood. She had a handsome, supportive husband, Dorian, and 2 beautiful children who were often featured as props in her perfectly staged photographs. Her brand was built on a foundation of authenticity that was, in fact, entirely fraudulent. Because I was her silent partner. Her secret primary investor. The truth, known only to me and to her, was that Chloe's effortless life was funded almost entirely by me. Her mortgage payments on her sprawling suburban home, the lease on her luxury SUV, the tuition for my grandchildren's elite private school, the designer clothes she showcased in her halls, the lavish vacations that became her most popular content. All of it was paid for by a substantial, secret monthly allowance I transferred from my late husband's trust into her private account. I did it out of love, of course. A deep, boundless, and perhaps foolishly enabling love. I wanted my daughter to have everything. I wanted her to live a life free from the financial anxieties that had occasionally plagued my own early years. I saw her online success, her brand, as her career, and I was simply providing the seed money, the capital for her to build her dream. I never suspected that in her eyes, my contribution was not a gift, but an entitlement, and that my life's work as a wife, a mother, a homemaker, was something she viewed with a deep, corrosive contempt. The baby shower was to be her magnum opus, the ultimate piece of content for her brand. She was pregnant with her 3rd child, and the celebration was planned with the precision of a military campaign. It was to be held at a chic, expensive downtown venue, with a guest list of her most stylish friends and fellow influencers. And, of course, I was expected to foot the bill. "Mama," she had said to me over the phone, her voice a symphony of practiced sweetness, "we want this to be absolutely perfect. A real reflection of our family's joy. But the costs are just astronomical. The caterer, the floral arrangements, it's all so much." "Don't you worry about a thing, my love," I had replied, as I always did. "You just focus on staying healthy and happy. I'll take care of it." I transferred the funds without a second thought. It was a staggering amount, but what was money compared to my daughter's happiness, to the celebration of a new grandchild? I arrived at the party feeling a familiar mixture of pride and a quiet sense of unease. The venue was beautiful, yes, but it was cold, impersonal, filled with people I didn't know who were all taking pictures of each other. Chloe was in her element, gliding through the room, a radiant, pregnant queen, her phone held aloft as she filmed a live stream for her followers. She greeted me with a quick air-kissy hug. "Oh, Mama, you made it. Doesn't everything look wonderful? I knew you'd want it to be perfect." The "you'd want" was a subtle but sharp twist of the knife. It was her party, her vision, her friends. But it was my money and therefore my desire for perfection. I found a quiet corner and watched the proceedings, a silent, benevolent ghost in the machine of her success. I watched her open lavish gifts, her cries of delight a little too loud, a little too practiced. I watched my son-in-law Dorian stand by her side, a proud, handsome accessory to her performance. I felt a pang of loneliness, of invisibility. I was the architect of this entire scene, the silent benefactor, yet I was treated as little more than a background extra, the sweet old mother to be smiled at and then ignored. But I pushed the feeling down. This was her day. And a mother's love, I told myself, was about finding joy in her child's happiness, even if that happiness had no room for her. I had no idea that in a few short minutes I would be made to feel not just invisible but utterly, completely worthless. The baby shower was in full swing, a carefully orchestrated performance of feminine joy and affluent celebration. The air was thick with the scent of expensive flowers and even more expensive perfume. Laughter, light and brittle, tinkled around me like wind chimes. Chloe was the sun around which all the other planets in the room orbited, her pregnant belly the new, celebrated center of her personal universe. She was holding court near the towering cake, surrounded by a gaggle of her sleek, stylish friends, all of them fellow influencers, or the wives of important men. They were discussing the trials and tribulations of modern motherhood. I was standing nearby, talking to one of Chloe's older aunts, when I overheard a young woman ask a question about sleep training. The advice being offered was a torrent of trendy New Age jargon that sounded both complicated and, to my ears, utterly nonsensical. "You have to respect the baby's sleep sovereignty," one of them declared with an air of profound wisdom. "Co-sleeping is essential for attachment, but only on sustainably sourced bamboo linens." I couldn't help but smile, a small, gentle, private smile. It all sounded so stressful. I remembered my own days with a young Chloe, the simple, quiet wisdom passed down from my own mother. A firm but loving routine, a warm bottle, a soft lullaby. It had worked perfectly well. Perhaps it was a flicker of my old self, the mother who had once been the center of her daughter's world. Or perhaps I just wanted to feel included, to contribute something more than just the funds that had paid for the very canapes they were nibbling on. I saw a small opening in the conversation and with a warm heart I stepped in. "You know," I began, my voice soft, "my mother always used to say that the best way to get a baby to sleep is to make sure they're warm, well-fed, and to let them cry for just a few minutes before you go to them. Teaches them to self-soothe. It sounds hard, but it gives them a great gift later in life." I had offered my small piece of traditional time-tested wisdom with a gentle, loving smile. The circle of young women turned to look at me. Their expressions were not ones of interest, but of a polite, baffled silence. It was as if a piece of antique furniture had suddenly started speaking. And then Chloe, my daughter, turned to me. Her radiant smile was gone, replaced by a tight, hard, socialite smile that did not reach her eyes. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on my arm, her grip surprisingly firm. Her followers were watching this on her phone, which was propped up on a nearby table, its small red light a silent, recording witness. "Mama, please," she said, her voice a low, sweet and utterly venomous whisper, loud enough for everyone in the circle to hear. "Let the experts handle this conversation. We're talking about modern, evidence-based parenting. It's all very complex." She gave my arm a condescending little pat. Then she delivered the final, devastating blow. "You don't work, so don't talk." The world stopped. "You don't work, so don't talk." The words, so casual, so dismissive, so profoundly cruel, struck me with the force of a physical slap. My entire life, my entire identity as a mother, a homemaker, a wife, the CEO of my family's well-being, the woman who had managed a household, raised a child, cared for a sick husband, and quietly stewarded a fortune. All of it, my life's work, erased in a single brutal sentence because it did not come with a paycheck. I was nothing. A non-contributor. A woman whose opinions were worthless because she had never held a real job. The circle of women looked away, a ripple of awkward embarrassment passing through them. They didn't defend me, of course. They just pretended they hadn't heard. Dorian, my son-in-law, who was standing nearby, just smirked, a small, triumphant little twitch of his lips. He had likely heard his wife use similar sentiments in private 100 times. My face burned with a shame so hot, so absolute, it felt like it would consume me. I looked at my daughter, at her beautiful, smiling, monstrous face, and I saw her for what she truly was. Not my child, but a stranger, a cold, ungrateful stranger who was so deeply ashamed of me, of my simple, unemployed life, that she was willing to publicly humiliate me at her own baby shower. An event that my worthless money had paid for in its entirety. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. I simply, slowly withdrew my arm from her grasp. "You are right, Chloe," I said, my voice a quiet, empty whisper that was somehow colder than any shout. "My mistake." I turned and walked away, my back ramrod straight, my head held high, even as my entire world was crumbling around me. I walked through the laughing, chattering crowd, a ghost at a party I had paid for, and I found a small, quiet, empty library off the main hall. I sank into a leather armchair, the silence of the room a blessed relief. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. But as I sat there, my heart shattering into a million pieces, a new feeling, a feeling I hadn't known I was still capable of, began to emerge from the wreckage. It was the cold, hard, and deeply satisfying click of a financial analyst's mind switching on. She said I didn't work. She said my contribution was worthless. She was about to receive a full, detailed, and utterly devastating audit of my life's work. My revenge would not be emotional. It would be factual. It would be numerical. It would be a toast she would never forget, a toast written not in words of love, but in a long, damning list of receipts. The humiliation of Chloe's words, "You don't work, so don't talk," was a slow-acting poison. It didn't just wound my pride. It sought to invalidate my entire existence. The life I had lived, the choices I had made, the endless, invisible labor of managing a home, of raising a child, of caring for a husband, all of it in her world amounted to a grand, useless zero because it didn't come with a paycheck. I sat in the quiet, wood-paneled library of the venue, the muffled sounds of her party a distant, mocking echo. For a long while I just stared at the intricate patterns on the Persian rug, my mind a blank canvas of shock and pain. The sheer, breathtaking cruelty of it, the public dismissal in front of her polished, judgmental friends. It was a wound so deep I wasn't sure how I would ever recover. But then the quiet fury began its slow, methodical work. The grief and the shame, which had been a suffocating fog, began to burn away, leaving behind a cold, clear, and utterly resolute landscape. I was not a hysterical, emotional old woman. I was Hattie Dubois. I was the widow of a brilliant, successful man. I was the silent primary investor in the very brand my daughter was so proud of. And I, a woman who had managed a multi-million-dollar estate with the precision of a corporate CEO for years, had just been told my opinion was worthless because I didn't work. The irony was so profound, so bitter, it was almost laughable. My revenge, I knew in that moment, would not be an emotional outburst. That was her game, a game of tears and performative victimhood I could never win. No. My revenge would be a quiet, dignified, and utterly devastating presentation of facts. It would be a business meeting conducted in the middle of her baby shower. It would be a public audit. I took out my small, elegant smartphone from my handbag. While Chloe was busy live-streaming her perfect party, I, her unemployed mother, was logging into my private, secure banking portal. My fingers, which had trembled with hurt just moments before, were now steady, precise. I didn't need to look far. My records were meticulous. My late husband, Robert, had taught me the importance of a clear paper trail, of documenting everything. "Paper never forgets, Hattie," he used to say. And he was right. I began to compile my list. It was not a list of grievances, but a list of transactions. A ledger of my love, a ledger she had mistaken for an endless, unconditional line of credit. I didn't have my physical notebooks with me, but my bank's online portal held all the ammunition I needed. I opened a fresh note on my phone and began to type, my mind a cold, efficient machine. The past year. I decided to limit it to just the last 12 months. To go back further would be overkill, a deluge of data that might lose its impact. No, a single year of her dependence would be more than enough to make my point. My fingers flew across the small screen, my memory, the one she so often implied was failing, providing the context for each transaction. First, the big ones. The transfer of $50,000 last spring for the down payment on the new luxury SUV she'd claimed was essential for the baby's safety. The $20,000 for the family vacation to Italy, a trip from which I had received only a single generic postcard. The $10,000 to pay off a credit card debt she had tearfully confessed to after a disastrous shopping spree. Then the monthly expenses. The car payment, over $700, automatically debited from an account I funded. The mortgage assistance, a small contribution of $2,000 a month I sent her to help with their crushing house payments. And of course, the tuition for my grandchildren's private school, a bill I had quietly taken over when she and Dorian claimed they were struggling. And then the smaller, more insidious drains on my resources. The $5,000 for the emergency root canal. The $2,000 for the essential new laptop for her business. The endless smaller transfers labeled groceries, kids' clothes, a little something to tide me over. And finally, the most damning evidence of all, the expenses for this very party. I had the records right here in my email. $3,000 for the caterer. $2,000 for the venue rental. $1,500 for the floral arrangements. All paid directly from my account. The list grew, a long, damning indictment of her greed and my own foolish, boundless generosity. The total, even I was shocked to see, was well into six figures. For a single year. I looked at the list on my phone at the stark, undeniable numbers. This was my work. This was my contribution. A contribution she had not only taken for granted, but had actively, publicly scorned. My plan was simple. There would be a time for toasts later in the party. A time for family members to offer their well wishes. I would stand up. I would take the microphone. And I would deliver my own toast. A toast to my daughter's success. A success I had so silently, so completely underwritten. I would not be angry. I would not be emotional. I would be a financial analyst presenting her annual report. I saved the note, my hand steady now, my heart a cold, hard and resolute drum. I stood, smoothed down my dress and prepared to rejoin the party. The performance of the grieving, silent mother was over. It was time for the quiet, meticulous CEO to make her presence felt. The meeting of the shareholders of Chloe Dubois Thompson Inc. was about to be called to order. And there was going to be a hostile takeover. I walked out of the quiet library and back into the loud, pastel-colored chaos of the baby shower. The transition was jarring. It was like stepping from a cold, quiet war room into the heart of a frivolous, oblivious masquerade ball. No one seemed to have noticed my absence. Chloe was still the radiant center of attention, laughing as she held up a tiny, ridiculously expensive pair of designer baby shoes for her friends to admire. Dorian, my son-in-law, stood beside her, a proud, foolish grin on his face. They were so consumed by their performance, so secure in their world of lies, that they had no idea their chief financial backer was about to initiate a full-scale audit live in front of their entire audience. I moved through the room with a new, quiet purpose. My earlier feelings of shame and invisibility were gone, replaced by a cold, almost detached sense of clarity. I was no longer a guest at this party. I was an anthropologist, observing the strange, baffling rituals of a tribe I no longer belonged to. I found my friend Janice by the dessert table. She looked at me, her eyes full of a worried concern. "Hattie, are you all right? You disappeared. I was worried about you." I gave her hand a small, reassuring squeeze. "I'm fine, Janice," I said, my voice low. "More than fine. I've just been preparing." "Preparing for what?" she asked, her brow furrowed. I just smiled, a small secret smile. "A toast," I said. "I believe there will be a time for toasts later, and I feel I have something rather significant to contribute." She looked at me, at the new steely glint in my eyes, and a slow smile of understanding spread across her own face. "Oh," she said, a note of delighted anticipation in her voice. "I see. Well, I for one cannot wait to hear it." I spent the next hour preparing myself, not with champagne, but with a quiet mental fortitude. I found a small empty chair in a corner, and under the guise of an old woman resting her feet, I went over my notes. My toast, which I had typed out on my phone, was not a speech of loving words and sentimental wishes. It was a ledger. A cold, hard, factual accounting of my daughter's financial life, a life she believed was her own creation. I rehearsed the delivery in my mind. The tone had to be perfect. Not angry. Not bitter. That would be too easy for them to dismiss as the ramblings of a scorned old woman. No. My tone had to be one of quiet, almost sad sincerity. I would be the loving mother, so proud of her daughter's success that she simply had to share the secret of how it was all achieved. I would frame my public evisceration of her character as a heartfelt tribute. The cruelty of it, the sheer, delicious irony, would be my own private satisfaction. I thought about the years of my own work, the work she had so casually, so cruelly dismissed. The endless, unpaid hours of managing a household, of raising a child, of caring for a sick husband, the emotional labor of being the family's anchor, its constant, reliable North Star. And then, after Robert passed, the work of managing our estate, of making wise investments, of quietly, meticulously, growing the fortune that was now funding this very party. My life had been a testament to a different kind of work, a kind she was too shallow, too materialistic to ever understand or value. "You don't work," she had said. The words echoed in my mind no longer as a source of pain, but as a rallying cry. She wanted to talk about work? About contributions? Very well. Let's talk about contributions. Let's tally them up, shall we? The moment came as I knew it would after they had cut the enormous multi-tiered cake. Dorian, playing the role of the proud husband and host, tapped a glass with a spoon, calling for quiet. "Friends, family," he began, his arm wrapped possessively around Chloe's shoulders. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this incredible moment with us. To celebrate my beautiful, brilliant wife, and the new life we are about to bring into the world." He beamed at Chloe. "And now, I believe a few people would like to say a few words." Chloe's best friend went first with a gushing, tearful tribute full of inside jokes. Then Dorian's father with a pompous, long-winded speech about family legacy. Then they opened the floor. I waited a moment, letting the polite applause die down. Then I slowly, deliberately stood up. A small hush fell over the room as I made my way to the front, my movements calm, measured. I could see a flicker of annoyance on Chloe's face, a look that said, "Oh God, what is the old woman going to say now?" She likely expected a few rambling, sentimental platitudes. She was not prepared for what was coming. I took the microphone. I looked out at the sea of expectant faces, at the friends, the family, the social media phone still recording live. I smiled, a serene, grandmotherly smile. "Hello everyone," I began, my voice clear and strong. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Hattie Dubois. I am Chloe's mother. And my heart is just so full today seeing my daughter so happy, so successful, so supported." I looked directly at Chloe, my smile never wavering. My daughter and I were having a conversation earlier, and she reminded me of a very important truth. She said to me, "Mama, you don't work." And she is right. My life's work has not been a career, but a contribution. A quiet, behind-the-scenes investment in my daughter's happiness and success. And today I am so overcome with pride at the fruits of that investment, that I feel I must, as the primary and silent financial partner in Chloe Dubois Thompson, Inc., give a brief, celebratory accounting to the shareholders. To all of you. I pulled out my phone, my list of numbers ready. The trap was set. The toast, a toast written in the cold, hard currency she so admired, was about to be served. The room was silent, a thick, expectant hush falling over the well-dressed guests. Chloe's smile was frozen on her face, a brittle porcelain thing, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified confusion. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew instinctively that she had lost control of her own carefully orchestrated narrative. I held the microphone in one hand, my phone in the other, a quiet 66-year-old woman in a simple silk dress, about to conduct the most hostile takeover this city had ever seen. I smiled again, a warm, maternal smile that was a masterpiece of deception. As the silent partner in my daughter's incredible life, I began, my voice ringing with a clear, steady confidence. I feel it's only right to acknowledge the significant financial investments that have made her success, and this beautiful party possible. Takes a village, as they say. Or in this case, a very dedicated, very private investor. I looked down at my phone as if reading from a prepared speech. My contributions this year have been varied, but I believe they paint a picture of a mother's profound love and support. Let's start with the big ones, shall we? I could see Dorian shifting uncomfortably, a nervous frown creasing his brow. Chloe was a statue, her face pale beneath her expensive makeup. In January, I announced, my voice clear and conversational, to alleviate the crushing financial stress my daughter was under, I made a contribution of $10,000 to pay off her lingering credit card debt from her Christmas shopping. A fresh start for the new year. A few polite, confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. In March, I continued, my rhythm steady, for her and Dorian's anniversary, I was so pleased to be able to fund their spontaneous romantic getaway to Italy. Beautiful trip. The investment for that particular memory was $22,500. More murmurs, this time louder, less confused, more speculative. I saw Chloe's best friend shoot her a sharp, questioning look. I knew for a fact that Chloe had told everyone that trip was a surprise gift from Dorian for a big commission he had landed. In May, I went on, my voice never wavering, my daughter decided she needed a more brand-appropriate vehicle. I was happy to provide the $50,000 down payment for her new luxury SUV. So much safer for the new baby, we all agreed. The room was now utterly, completely silent. Every eye was fixed on me, then on Chloe, then back to me. The live stream phone on the tripod was still recording, broadcasting this quiet, devastating audit to her thousands of followers. Then there are the monthly operating costs for the Chloe Dubois Thompson brand, I said as if I were a CEO presenting a quarterly report. There is the $700 monthly car payment, the $2,000 monthly household supplement to help with their mortgage, and of course the tuition for my brilliant grandchildren's private school, which I was so proud to take over this year. A small contribution of $32,000. I looked up from my phone, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces. It takes a lot to maintain such a beautiful life, I said with a sympathetic little shake of my head. The designer clothes, the organic groceries, the weekly salon appointments, the credit card bills, which I have also been happy to support, tell a story of a woman with impeccable and very expensive taste. Finally, I brought it home. And that brings us to today, I said, a warm smile gracing my lips. This beautiful celebration. A day I was so happy to make possible. I looked directly at Chloe, whose face was now a mask of ashen, tear-streaked horror. So, let's raise our glasses one more time. A toast. To the caterer, a small business I was proud to support to the tune of $3,000. To the floral arrangements, a beautiful investment of $1,500. And to this lovely venue, a $2,000 contribution to a successful day. I paused, letting the final, damning numbers hang in the air. A toast, I said, my voice now dropping to a quiet, almost intimate whisper, to my daughter. A woman who, thanks to my unemployed life's work, has never had to work a real day in her life. I raised my glass. So you see, my darling girl, I said, my eyes locked on hers, when you told me earlier, you don't work so don't talk, you were mistaken about one thing. I may not have a job. But oh my dear, I added, my voice now as cold and as sharp as a diamond, my money works. And you, my love, are my single greatest and most disappointing investment to date. I took a delicate sip of my water, my work done. The silence that followed was broken by a single sharp, choked sob. It was Chloe. The empire of lies she had so carefully constructed had just been publicly, factually, and completely demolished. By her own unemployed mother. The aftermath of my toast was not loud or explosive. It was a quiet, catastrophic implosion. The party, which had been so full of cheerful, self-congratulatory chatter just minutes before, died a swift and silent death. The air grew thick with a palpable, horrified embarrassment. Guests who had been laughing and celebrating with Chloe now looked at her with a mixture of pity, contempt, and a delicious, schadenfreude-filled fascination. They averted their eyes, murmuring apologies, suddenly remembering early morning appointments, babysitters that needed to be relieved. They fled the scene of the crime, leaving Chloe and Dorian standing alone amidst the wreckage of their own party, surrounded by expensive flowers and a mountain of gifts that now felt like accusations. Chloe's live stream, which she had so foolishly left running, had captured everything. Her initial condescending dismissal of me. My quiet, calm, and utterly devastating rebuttal. My recitation of her financial dependence. Her final, choked sob of humiliation. The comment section, I was later told by my delighted friend Janice, had been a raging inferno of public opinion, a real-time stoning in the digital public square. Her followers, the very people whose admiration she so desperately craved, had turned on her with a vicious, gleeful fury. Her brand, built on a foundation of aspirational authenticity, had been exposed as a complete and utter fraud. It had imploded live for all the world to see. Her friends, her supposed tribe of stylish, successful women, were the first to abandon the sinking ship. They offered her no comfort, no words of support. They just vanished. Her phone, which had been buzzing with congratulatory messages all day, went silent. My own family, my sister, my cousins who had witnessed the public humiliation, surrounded me, their faces a mixture of shock and a fierce, protective pride. "Hattie," my sister whispered, her arm around my shoulder, "that was the most terrifying, most magnificent thing I have ever seen." I didn't stay to witness the full extent of the carnage. My work was done. I had presented my report. I had balanced the ledger. With my friend Janice on one arm and my sister on the other, I walked out of that chic, soulless venue, leaving Chloe and Dorian to clean up their own mess, both literally and figuratively. The consequences for them were, as I knew they would be, catastrophic. Dorian, whose own sense of self had been so tied to the illusion of wealth his wife had created, was humiliated. He was not just married to a liar. He was a fool who had been duped along with everyone else. Their marriage, already strained by their financial recklessness, did not survive the harsh light of this public truth. I heard they separated a few weeks later. And Chloe, my daughter, her world, the one she had so carefully constructed out of my money and her own lies, was in ruins. Her influencer career was over. Her friendships, built on a foundation of superficiality and status, evaporated. And the secret, generous river of funds from her mother, the one that had been her lifeblood for a decade, was now permanently and irrevocably cut off. The Bank of Mom was closed for business. I received a single vitriolic multi-page email from her a week later. It was a torrent of blame, of accusations, of self-pity. I had humiliated her. I had destroyed her life. I had been a cruel, vindictive, jealous mother. She took no responsibility for her own actions, for her own breathtaking ingratitude, for the cruelty she had inflicted upon me. I read the email once, then with a calm, steady hand I deleted it. I did not reply. My toast had been my final word on the matter. My life, however, began anew. Free from the constant draining burden of my daughter's entitlement, I found a new sense of peace, of freedom. I had my home, my friends, my financial security. And I had my dignity, a thing I had fought for and won back in the most public way imaginable. My revenge was not just in her downfall, but in my own quiet, joyful rise. I started traveling, using the money I had once poured into her lavish vacations for my own adventures. I took a cooking class in Tuscany. I saw the cherry blossoms in Japan. I lived. My relationship with my daughter is gone. That is a grief I will likely carry with me always. A mother's love, even for a child who has so profoundly betrayed her, does not simply switch off. But I have learned a hard, painful lesson. That sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is to let her child face the full, unvarnished consequences of their own choices. I did not work a traditional job, no. But my life's work was raising a daughter. And my final project, it seemed, was teaching her a lesson she would never forget. That a mother's contribution, a mother's value, cannot be measured in dollars and cents. And that when you try to silence the woman who gave you everything, you may just find that she has kept all the receipts. And she is not afraid to read them aloud.